did you expect from it?
Well, I expected some, you know, in my mind there was already in a lot of ways it felt like to me that the air had already been let out of the balloon because of the report, because of the testimonies, because of you know, books, because of a lot of things, and so I sort of felt like, well, most of it's out there. But I think, you know, the moment, especially here in the United States, when Americans heard me say it, you know, it was tough. And then, you know, the Oprah piece was for half of the population or half of the audience, it was too much.
Yeah.
You know, what? Doping and EPO and transfusions and blood, and it was too much for them. The other half thought, well, that's not enough. He stopped short. He didn't tell us name. He didn't name names. He didn't tell us enough. And so you have these two sides that were both unhappy, which makes the whole room unhappy. And
on reflection, would you have done it differently if you had the chance again?
Yeah, I mean, definitely upon reflection, I would have just waited. I mean, I don't think I was ready to sit in that chair. There were other external reasons and ideas as to why. I mean, I'm not a patient person, so you know, I wanted to, and you know, I felt like Oprah was the right chair to sit across from. But it probably needed another 3 to 6 months, but maybe not. I mean, hindsight's perfect, but
have you? Sorry.
None of it was going to be. None of it was going to be well accepted. I mean, people were mad, and people were upset, and I get that. I mean, I listen. The buck stops with me. I mean, I'm the one who kind of led the band for a long time, and people helped me. They defended me. They were part of the momentum, and they had a right to be upset.
Have you changed as a person? And if so, how?
I don't know. I get asked that. I always say, I don't know. Perhaps people around me would be better to ask that question.
Some out there may expect you to be a recluse, to be broke, lots of self-pity. That doesn't come across. You seem as resilient, perhaps, as you ever were. I mean, does that give you a sense of satisfaction that you're managing to deal with this well?
Well, I mean, I don't have a choice but to deal with it. I mean, it's a tough situation. I put myself in the situation, but I have a few things that I have to think about. I mean, I have 5 children. I have a significant and incredible woman in my life that is the mother of 2 of my children. I have what I view is, at 43 years old, I have, I don't know, hopefully another 40 years at least. Maybe I'm not even halfway. So I have another phase in my life that being a recluse or clamming up wouldn't help any of that. I mean, my children wouldn't want to see their dad do that. Anna wouldn't want to see me do that. My friends wouldn't want to see that. I think, you know, like it or not, the cycling world and the cancer world doesn't want to see that. So I, you know, as tough as it is, or as much headwind as there is sometimes, I mean, I have to just kind of forge ahead and do my thing and fit in wherever I can.
And is family the key to getting through this for you? Is that the most important factor? Or was it your upbringing that toughened you up? I mean, what has been the decisive factor in being able to deal with this? Because other individuals would have struggled to deal with it.
I mean, I think all those things. I think my family is a significant factor in terms of just maintaining a sense of normalcy. Certainly my upbringing is significant as well, because my mom was, you know, faced all kinds of crazy odds, and she was just always a drill sergeant. But also, I mean, I've dealt with other you know, complications in my life that quite frankly as much as I don't like being in the place that I'm in or have been in, that was worse. I mean, facing what may not be a death sentence, but 50-50 odds is not anything nobody's telling me today that, hey man, this is controversial, this is toxic, and you might die. Nobody's saying that. And so I've as bad as it is on some days, and I don't want to over dramatize how bad it is, but as complicated as it is sometimes, not nearly as bad as it once was.
If you were a man on the street or a cycling fan, would you forgive Lance Armstrong now? Would you say it's time to move on?
Well, that's really not fair. I mean, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, selfishly, I would say, yeah, we're getting close to that time. But that's me. I mean, my word doesn't matter anymore. I mean, what matters is ultimately what collectively those people on the street, whether that's the cycling community, the cancer community, it matters what they think. I mean, listen, of course I want to be out of timeout. I mean, what kid doesn't? But
don't you have the keys to your redemption, though? You say it's not about what you say, but some would argue it is. If you can just say what people want you to say, cooperate, give the full story, that's there for you if you want it. Some would argue.
Yeah. So I mean, just going back to just right quick on the whether it's time. I mean, if I were looking at somebody, and I tried to just look at the whole story in its totality and say, all right, I don't like what happened. I don't like that this guy lied to me. I don't like that he doped. I don't like that era that he raised. I don't like any of it. I would also have to think, like I would do with anybody else who's been in this situation, well, what else is part of this story, right? I mean, is that all it was for them? Did they have a sporting career where they made money, or was there another side of it that I'm just not remembering, or I'm not honoring or thinking about? And I mean, listen, I spent a long time trying to build up an organization to help a lot of people, and I can't lie. I mean, it hurts that that's sort of been put away and almost forgotten, and almost in some parts of this story or some parts of the world, almost discounted, as if it was a sham or as if it was PR or all of these taglines that we use. It wasn't. I mean, that was very real, and it meant a lot to me. And and listen, the cut that is the deepest. Forget what the guy on the street thinks about whether or not Livestrong was a sham. The deepest cut was Livestrong saying, "You need to step away."
How much that hurt?
Oh yeah. I mean, it doesn't get worse than that. But we are where we are, and
there's no chance of a reuniting with them. Is that gone forever?
Well, forever is a big word. I'm not going anywhere.
So it's possible.
I'm not going anywhere.
Would you like it to happen?
Depends on which day you ask me. Listen, it was not a sham. It was significant work that helped. The numbers are there. I mean, the dollar value is there. The amount of people that were absolutely and directly served is there. More than 3 million people. And it's been disturbing to me to see the change in the organization and to see the drop off in the organization. Would I listen, if you asked Steve Jobs, somewhere between leaving Apple, going back to somewhere right in those Nexus days, he would have said, I don't ever care to go back. I'm going to build the next great thing. But ultimately he goes back, and the rest is history. So listen, I want to get back to a place where I can help people and affect change. And if it's there, great, and hopefully so. But if it has to be elsewhere, then I'll find that place.
In terms of the best chance you'd have of helping people would be for that ban to be reduced, is it? What would that enable you to do?
I don't think the ban. the band would help reduce my boredom, but the band doesn't have anything to do with Live Strong or my ability to work in that community. I don't think, I mean, perhaps it speeds it up. I mean, we all know that, I don't know the examples in Great Britain or in Europe of athletes that have fallen, but they've been able to sort of do their job and tell a story. And I know the examples here in the United States, the Tiger Woodses, the Michael Vicks, even the Bill Clintons. I mean, people that are still out there able to work. You come back quicker. So it is tougher for me, but I don't think that's imperative to whether or not, you know, I can go start a new movement or revive an old movement and help people.
So it sounds to me like it's not so much the band you're focusing on, it's more you just want the opportunity to inspire in the best way you possibly can. I mean, you want to be forgiven ultimately, right, rather than the band to be reduced. You just want it's more about sentiment towards you.
The ban is completely out of my hands.
Sure.
I mean, and I think in most people's minds, the ban, even if it's unrealistic to them, it's one that I left myself with no choice on. That's probably not true. Not all of that is true. There's a lot that people don't know, but needless to say, it's something that they feel like I brought upon myself, either for old action or sort of new reaction or whatever. So that's not, I don't think that's the key to forgiveness. And whether or not I want to be forgiven, I mean, we all want to be forgiven.
Yeah.
But that's not, there's a lot of really, really bad people that want to be forgiven that will never be forgiven. And I might be somewhat in that camp. You know, I think the thing that it seems like people are thinking more about is just, okay, we've been through this for 2 years. We've heard all the stories. We keep hearing more stories. It looks like we'll hear even more stories with the report out of the UCI or with the report out of CERC. At some point, how does this all, I get it, he did that, it looks like they all did that. How's that, I mean, these guys got no punishment, some got 6 months, he got life. How does that add up?
Do you think you should have those 7 titles back?
It's not for me to say. Listen, I mean, I think if I'm not the winner, I think there has to be a winner. I mean, and I'm not saying that, I'm just saying that as a fan. You know, if you can't have, if you go to Wikipedia and you look at the Tour de France and you go to the list for 100 years, you know, there's this huge block in World War I, there's no winners, World War II, there's no winners, and then all of a sudden, it almost seems like there's another World War. There has to be a winner. But that's not for me to say, and look, I'm not trying to, you know, puff myself up here. It was an unfortunate time. It was a terrible time. But it was an imperfect storm, and there needs to be a winner. And you know, listen, I don't think history is stupid. I can tell you history is not stupid. History ultimately rectifies a lot of these things. And if you had to ask me what I think is going to happen in 50 years, I mean, I don't think it sits empty in 50 years. Maybe there's somebody else's name in there, but you can't leave it empty.
Do you feel, though, that you've been harshly dealt with? Do you feel that you've been made the scapegoat?
Well, I deserved my actions and reactions and the way I treated certain scenarios were way out of line. So I deserved some punishment. Has it gone too far? Of course I'm going to say yes. But there's a lot of people that say it hasn't gone far enough. But just again, just for the good of the sport, I don't see how we can. I mean, I think there has to be some semblance of balance. But it's a complicated. It's a complicated structure. You know, you have the international governing body that's really has no power. You have the IOC that has a lot of power. You have WADA who has a lot of power, and then from there, the USOC, USADA. So you have the, I mean, you had an organization that really had the ability to say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's who we're going after. Here's the rules we're going to make. And if we need to bend them a little bit here and there, we're going to do that too. I mean, like it or not, that's really what happened. And so, but nonetheless, here we are.
You said you didn't cycle anymore, go on group rides. Have you fallen out of love with cycling?
It's only been a couple months. I haven't ridden, I think I remember, November 5th. November 4th or 5th, I think, was the last time I rode a bike. But for a variety of reasons. Listen, I still love the game. I probably don't love it like I used to, and it's tough for me. It's and when I say tough, not like it's tough to do. It's just tough to see, tough to be around, and people are interesting. Like I mean, we had the cyclocross national championships here in Austin last week. And I've been, in the last ride that I ever did was a big ride in Southern California, November 5th. And it's always the same vibe. Like I roll up, and it's sort of like, oh cool, Lance is here. And then it's like, wait, I don't know if that's cool. And then they look around and they're like, is this cool? And then they check with each other. And then ultimately they settle on some place where it's like, yeah, I guess it's cool. But it's, listen, I don't need to walk into a place where everybody's, getting me off. I mean, I don't need that. But nobody wants to walk in that room where everybody looks around. It's like, so maybe we're just not there yet.
You mentioned your boredom earlier. How big a problem is that? Now you can't compete.
Well, I compete every day on a very bad level on the golf course, but I mean, it's frustrating. Listen, it's frustrating in the sense that I still think I could be competing at some sport at a fairly high level, which nobody cares about. Nobody wants to hear me say that. But what's really frustrating, and probably 80% of it, is that if my mom got MS tomorrow, and thank God she didn't, and doesn't have it, but whatever, and that was something that I wanted to help, and I wanted to go work for, and I wanted to run the Boston Marathon and raise $100,000 for the MS Society. I couldn't do it, and I wanted to not just run. I'm going to walk it, run a little bit, walk the aid stations, and finish in like 4 hours and 15 minutes, but raise $100,000. I can't do it.
That's wrong.
I don't know how anybody thinks that's right.
But isn't that the nature of a punishment, that it has to be a deterrent to others?
Okay,
well, to set an example, some would argue, and that may be
at the expense of others. Nothing benefits me by going and running a slow marathon. These are just extreme examples. But I don't think anybody thinks that that's right. If Lance Armstrong wanted to go do a ping pong tournament or a broom ball tournament or an archery meet or tournament, whatever they call it, or run a slow marathon or a swim meet for fun. Meanwhile, let's not forget, I mean, where are all the other players in the story? I get it, I need to be punished. But we gotta look at the whole, don't we have to look at the whole play?
The critics would say you were the ringleader. It wasn't just the doping, it was the bullying, it was the intimidation, it was the lying under, in depositions, betraying of your friends.
Right, and some of that's true, some of that's not true. There was certainly a dishonesty there that I think is totally regrettable and inexcusable. The ringleading, the bullying, not totally true.
But you didn't cooperate with USADA, and others did. So there's another inconsistency. Had you done so, maybe you would have had a 2-year ban or a 6-month ban. Who knows? But we don't know because you didn't cooperate.
Right.
So
I know, and it's a great question. And what Travis would tell you, what USADA would tell you, which we've all heard 1,000 times. We gave Lance Armstrong the same opportunity as everybody else. We've heard that. Well, if you go ask George Hincapie, Christian Vandevelde, Dave Zabriskie, Tom Daniels, any of them, they're going to tell you how it went. The call goes like this. You're not getting punished. Here's what we need to hear. I never got that call.
Have you gone further with CERC, with the UCI's independent commission investigation than you did with Oprah? Have you given them more details? Have you dealt with them? Have you met them?
Well, I've met them twice. They've asked me not to go into details, but
Sure.
I think listen, everybody knows that I've met with them. And so that's not a secret. They've asked me to not sort of share specific details of the two meetings. But at this point, I mean, I think it's safe for me to say, and with respect to them, whatever questions they asked, I told. The interesting thing is there has been so much coverage of this, between the USADA report, between books, between movies, documentaries, other interviews, I mean, stories, I mean, testimony. A lot of it is out there. So, I mean, I don't know that there's a whole lot of there left. But certainly to the extent that they had questions, I mean, I was totally honest and I was totally transparent. I'm not, at this point in my life, I'm not out to protect anybody. I'm out to protect 7 people, and they all have the last name Armstrong.
Was it good to get off your chest? Did it feel liberating talking to them?
I felt like I got it off my chest with Oprah. I mean, it may not have been, again, it may not, too much for some, not enough for others, but that was, I mean, that was the initial sort of dump, data dump. And
you must have gone further, though, with CERC than with Oprah. They would have asked you for more details.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, I mean,
Yeah.
I didn't have any time restrictions, so we were in no hurry.
One of the big criticisms, though, of your interview with Oprah is that you didn't say how it was done, how it was orchestrated, give the details. Is that what you now have done?
Well, what was orchestrated?
The doping.
Well, but everybody knows that, don't they?
Well, we didn't hear it from you on that occasion.
Right. I mean, I don't know and again, I don't want to get into what they've
Sure.
asked or not asked or what I've answered or not answered. All I'll say is that whatever they asked me,
Sure.
I answered it. And there was not one question where I said, I'm not comfortable with that. And you know, they don't have any, I think the tricky thing for them is they don't have a real ultimate power to compel people to come, to compel people to answer certain questions. Whereas, I mean, look at the reason we're in this situation is because, I mean, forget USADA, but we're in this situation because the United States of America and the Department of Justice and the FDA and the federal agents compelled people with the threat of prison time to answer questions. So that's an awfully...
Aren't we in this situation because you cheated, ultimately?
Mm-hmm. Oh, we all did.
Some would say that that's the real reason we're in this
Who,
situation.
me or all of us?
Well, you and others, yeah. It's not the fact that people went after them and tried to get them to tell the truth. It was the fact that this happened in the first place. That's the core reason why this happened.
Yes, but
Some would argue.
Of course, but I don't think anybody else from that generation, had the federal agents standing at their door with a badge and a gun saying, you're going to answer my questions.
When you spoke to CERC, was that under oath?
No, I don't think anybody's under oath.
And was it as a result of an agreement, a deal that had been struck?
You know, the agreement and the deal that was struck was me, with you, with whoever's watching. I said from the beginning, and I even said it to Oprah, the day that there is a true international commission convened to address a 20-year problem for a global sport, I'll sit. I'm not sure how an American organization is going to resolve the problems of a global sport. That doesn't seem right to me or to most people. So I made that deal. I made it with you. I made it with anybody. And so they set up the commission. They put up the email address, and on day one we said we're here and we're ready. Let us know.
Do you hope that they will, because of your cooperation, recommend that your ban is reduced? Is that your hope?
I don't think it's their decision. I mean, I think they can make recommendations, but that's just a recommendation. I think there's.
Would you like them to, though? Would you hope for that?
Well, look, if I could go run the slow marathon for some organization, of course. I mean, there are places that I would like to go toe the starting line. That doesn't mean I want to win the Tour de France, or I want an 8th yellow jersey, or I want to win the Ironman, or but it just, But
it sounds like you want a partial, almost an amendment to this ban. You want to be able to do certain things, but you understand why you can't do others. Is that fair, or is it? I'm trying to get what you want, what you're hoping for.
Well,
you must want
I'm not going to tell you that, because nobody wants to hear what I think, how I think I've been mistreated, or how I think my punishments should be lifted or tweaked or changed or partially reduced. Nobody wants to hear me say that. I mean, listen, I think if everybody looks at the situation, I look at it daily, but nobody cares what I think about this. I get it, So, listen, these things I've done everything I said I'd do. I don't know, honestly, in the last 2 years, I don't know that I've done or not done something that I said I would do. I've made good on everything I said. I felt, we've talked about the International Commission. I said I'd be the first guy through the door. I did it.
Yeah.
For 15 years, I was a complete to a handful of people or a dozen people. I said I'm going to try to make it right with those people. And anybody that gave me an audience, I was there. Flying to Rome to sit with Simeone, flying to Paris to sit with Bessons, flying to Florida to sit with Emma, getting on the phone with the Andreas and apologizing. Other people wouldn't take the call. So whatever I had to do, settling the numerous lawsuits, I did it. Like, when have I said I'm done? Like, I keep doing what I said I was going to do, and I'm fine with that. I should be doing that. But never once did I say, you know what? No, I'm not doing that.
When it comes to the doping, would you do it again?
This is the most, I get this question a lot. And it's a very complicated question, and my answer is not a popular answer. If I was racing in 2015, no, I wouldn't do it again, because I don't think you have to do it again. If you take me back to 1995, when it was completely and totally pervasive, I'd probably do it again. People don't like to hear that.
But that's the honest answer.
Yeah, that's the honest answer. It's an answer that needs some explanation. And it's, I look at everything, when I made that decision, when my teammates made that decision, when the whole peloton made that decision. Like, we get it. It was a bad decision in an imperfect time, but it happened. When Lance Armstrong did that, I know what happened because of that. I know that, I know what happened to the sport of cycling from 1999 to 2005. I saw the better voices to answer that question are the guys I raced with. I don't know. Let's ask Jan Ulrich. Let's ask Zula. Ask. You have 200 guys a year for 7 years. You have 1,400, theoretically 1,400 guys. Let's ask them.
The fact the shirts are on the wall suggests you're not embarrassed by that. You feel you won them in a way fair and square because it was a level playing field. Is that how you feel ultimately? Because I put it to you that it wasn't a level playing. That's the problem with doping, is that it does create, EPO. It's not easy, is it, to get it to work effectively? You need clinics. You need very well-trained doctors, expensive. You know, and the richest teams probably were better equipped than other teams to benefit more from drugs, and therefore we don't know who was the best rider.
Right.
It may well have been you. Is that fair, or do you still feel you were the best?
I mean,
rider?
I would love to have. Look, I think it was a level playing field. I think as unfortunate as it was, I think our system was pretty dang conservative. But it doesn't change. It was just an unfortunate time for any of us. And there was no, listen, the Postal Service, let's not forget, I mean, everybody sits here today and, oh, Lance Armstrong is this and and all this money and power. When we started out, we were my first Tour de France, I was number 181, which means you were literally you were a wild card entry. I mean, this was a small, low budget, low science team. There was no, New York Yankees weren't rolling in here. I mean, at the end, yes, it was a big team, but it was something that we built over time. That's just not true. That's not reality of the way it was at that time.
You said earlier on that you're getting close now, you felt, to that time when it's appropriate for people to feel it's time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
Some would say, they'd say that's not good enough. What sort of message would that send out to anybody tempted, as you said, they may well be in the future? Is there a danger that by forgiving you, it would send the wrong message out?
And the hundreds of others thousands of others that have been forgiven? You got to have one. We have to make one example. That's the way our system's going to work. Because if that's the deal, if everybody says, if we all agree that we're going to make one example, everybody did the same thing, but we're going to make one example and we're good, then I'll be that guy. I don't think everybody thinks that way. But if we think, okay, that's it, we're hanging one dude, give him the news.
You think you should only got the same punishment as the others? Others would say.
I wish. Backing up, we talked about this a minute ago. I wish I was given the same opportunity.
Sure.
I really do. I mean, and by the way, in all fairness to me, to them, to you, to whoever's listening, I'm not sure what I would have said. I mean, if they would have called and said, okay, you just got to tell us what you know. We're not going to suspend you, but you got to come in. I might have said, go pound sand. But I know that I wasn't given that opportunity.
If I may, Lance, I'm just going to ask you a couple of quick things about the Oprah interview, which people said maybe you weren't as forthcoming as they would have liked you to have been. I mean, 09-10, you said that you weren't doping. Do you stick with that? You maintain that's the case?
Absolutely.
Does it hurt when people say he's lying?
On that, I have patience on that. I got patience on that because we are going to be at a time and place where there is a rock solid test for transfusions. And the first person that they're going to say, well, let's test your samples, is Lance Armstrong, is me. And I'll say, okay. So I can tell you that I didn't dope in 09 or 10 or 11, whatever years of the comeback it was, I didn't dope. And I will tell you that the day that a lab or a scientist or a group of people comes up with a definitive test for blood transfusions, I'll be the first man to give my samples. And not just one of them, I'll give them all. So, I mean, between those years, must be 100 samples, if not more. So that one, I just have to be patient on that one. That one I'll be proven right on.
How do you feel about the people who were involved in your downfall? You mentioned some of them earlier. The David Walshes, the Andrews, the Greg LeMonds.
I mean, a lot of that I get. Some I get more than others. I've tried to make, as I said earlier, I've tried to the best of my ability, whether it's a personal and emotional sort of balancing of things. I've tried, whether sometimes it's a financial balancing. I've tried. I get it. I enjoy I enjoy getting certain confirmations from certain people. I mean, and I don't think I'm overstepping here, but I mean, I love it when a text from Emma O'Reilly pops up just about some random thing, and I get to ask her, well, do you watch Sons of Anarchy? Because there's this whole Irish component to Sons of Anarchy, and I can't understand the Irish people on the show, and I can't understand her, so I love just that. I mean, I love it when Filippo Simeone sends me an email that says, Merry Christmas, I hope your family's doing good. It tells me that I've done what I was supposed to do, what I said I would do.
Yeah.
You know, others will never get there.
Do you partly have yourself to blame for that, though? Take Betsy Andreu. I mean, you were criticised for the answer you gave to Oprah about the alleged hospital confession. It was effectively a no comment.
Right.
Can you now shed any light on that? That may help the situation.
I mean, listen, Betsy was the first call I made. And it was actually they were both in the car together, so I talked to both of them. My behavior and my answers to her, the way I treated them, whether it's in interviews or just personally, was unacceptable. And I needed to apologize for that. If my kids act that way,
what she wanted more than anything else, though, was for you to validate what she'd said about that. Rightly or wrongly, that's what she wanted. You were
right, and I get that.
Can you not do that now? I mean, and if so, why not? I mean,
right. But if I have no recollection of that, if what happened 18 years ago in a hospital room, 24 hours after multiple brain surgeries, heavily medicated, if I don't have a specific recollection of it, I can't just say,
sure,
this is good for me, I'm just going to say it happened. You know, that's the answer. That's what I should have told Oprah, because I have no specific recollection of that. And it's, Betsy doesn't like it. She doesn't like that answer, but that's my answer. It doesn't change the fact that I was complete to her. And I called her and I said, I am sorry. And you know what? I mean that I'm sorry. She's retracted my apology or the acceptance of it. That's fine. It doesn't change that I'm still sorry. But I can't apologize forever. I mean, maybe we have to do that. But that seems a little extreme too. But you know, I was and will be sorry forever.
And just finally, you mentioned earlier, you know, what you focus on is tomorrow, your hopes for the future. What are they in general, apart from lowering your handicap?
I would love to lower my handicap, but you know, for me, life is it's still it's thinning out, but there's still those things hanging over me that I need to get rid of, and I look forward to a time where, you know, lawyers aren't on the top 3 calls every day, and you know, kind of all you care about is how your kids are doing in school and, you know, what their weather's like, and you know, the great day you had with your family, or what. I mean, those are the things that that I need to get back focusing on. I mean, I would love at some point to be in a place, and again, I may never be here, to help people. It's something that I never really cared to sort of advertise. It got advertised, but it was, I'd love to be back. And it's, I guess on a private level, I still do it on a one-on-one basis, almost daily.
You can still inspire. You've discovered this, have you? People still are inspired by you. You can still help people, give them belief, regardless of what's happened.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Jeff Thomas, for example, he told us that he still finds you inspirational.
Yeah. They tell me. I mean, they tell me that. So maybe they're lying, but no, I think there are still those people out there. I think the group that audience is smaller than it was before, but it doesn't matter. I don't need a field of 1,000 people.
Sure.
Everybody can tell you that. I mean, whoever needs help, I'm happy to help.
There are so many memories, Lance. When you get reminded of it over there, all the different stage wins honoured on the wall. What is the highlight of your long career? What are you most fond of?
Hard to say. I mean, you had 7 years, you had 150 stages. It's funny, for most of those 7 years, I hated 2003. I hated that close year with Jan. I hated I mean, the images or the memories of it of riding through the field or crashing on Luzard-Eden, I didn't like any of that. But as I get older and you look back on it, that ends up being the most special year. There were other moments. I mean, you could winning the prologue in 1999, putting on your first yellow jersey, beating Jan on Alpe d'Huez in 2001, winning the 6th Tour in 2004, ending a career with a 7th Tour, catching Jan in the prologue in 2005. You know, there's a lot of good memories, and that's the thing that I think. I feel like I won the tours. A lot of people don't think that I won. They think nobody won. They think those didn't happen. And I get that. I'm good with that. When I look at why I raced, these jerseys are on the wall because they're on the wall. It's not as if I say those have to be on the wall and I stand here and I look at them and I love that. That's not why they're there.
But you're proud of those victories.
Of course. And I have an identical set of 7 hanging in my house. But that's not, you know, there's not images or memories of my racing career all over the house. I raced because I was paid to do a job, and I felt like I had to do the job. Number 2, I raced because I loved the process. I loved training. I loved getting ready for the race. I loved all of that. And then I raced for my memories. Like, regardless of what somebody wants to give or take away, you can't take my memories. You can't take the memories of all the memories I have of racing against my rivals, sitting in the bus with my teammates, having dinner with my teammates, the intimate moments with Johan. You can't take that away. And so I didn't need. I'd leave the tour every year and fly home, or fly wherever I was going. I never once thought, I can't wait to be back here in 40 years and be standing around at the finish line and people going, hey, that old guy, oh, that Armstrong, he won 7 tours. I don't care about that. I never wanted that. I don't ever want to do that. I didn't want it then, I don't want it now. And so I got the 3 things that I wanted. I did my job. I worked hard on the process. And I cherish the memories, and they're mine.
The alternative to doping, you've often said it would have been going back home. Is that true? I mean, you're a supreme athlete. You're a determined individual. Could you not have succeeded?
Well, it would have been
maybe in triathlon, maybe if not cycling, maybe in a cleaner sport.
Oh, sure, something else. Yeah, maybe sure. Triathlon. No, but I could have stayed in cycling and potentially been pack fill. But I wasn't cut out for that. I'm sure there was another sport, but that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to win the Tour de France. And when I won it once, I thought, I want to do this again, and again, and again, and again. It just kept going. So I couldn't. It wasn't another competitive environment.
You said earlier on about bad days. You sometimes have bad days. What is a bad day? What makes it a bad day?
Well, I can't get out of bed. Kidding. No, there's not. Listen, everything in my life is in perspective, you know, and well, perspective sort of ebbs and flows. I've had bad days, but they weren't in the last 2 or 3 years. Bad days were October 2nd, 1996. I got bad news for you. You have advanced testicular cancer. You got a coin toss chance of survival. That's a bad day. So a bad day is you know, probably certainly involves some sort of legal nonsense BS, or I don't know. But a bad day is not.
It's not desperate.
No.
You said it was brutal earlier, though. That sounds pretty desperate.
Well, I don't know. I was loose with that word. Brutal. I mean, it'd be interesting to ask the people closest to me. I mean, yeah. I had my view of things. Our lives went from 100 miles an hour down the highway where you're supposed to go 55. They went to 10. I didn't like 100. I hated 100. I don't really like 10. I'd be happy with like 5 under, like 50, 55 maybe. But that might be better. I'd be interested to hear what Anna says to that question. What's a bad day look like for your man? Or what are your closest friends, you know? What is a bad day? What's he like on a bad day? But
how worried about you were your friends and family in the aftermath?
that's another good question for them.
Sure.
I mean, I'm sure they were worried. I know my mom was worried. You know, it's not something, I don't see her every day. I don't see her every week. But I know that it's her nature, it's probably every parent's nature to worry about their kids. But I think we've held up well. I haven't had that. My biggest fear was I'd have that day where one of my older kids, my 2 youngest ones are too young to even know, or their classmates to know. But you'd have that day where a 13-year-old or a 15-year-old would come home and just be in pieces. Dad, I heard this in the hallway, or I read this on social media, or is this true, and it's never happened. And
will it happen one day? Do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it will. But
because the one time you seemed to get emotional in that Oprah interview was when you referred to your son and
Right.
you said, "Stop defending me." And
Right.
it was a difficult moment to watch.
Right.
And
and
people
it
wanted to
hasn't-
see.
and it hasn't happened since then.
Yeah. They
Which-
wanted. Yeah.
Which
You ready for when it does? I mean, how tough will that be? Because it's going to happen. Kids are cruel sometimes, you know.
Yeah, but it hasn't yet, and it's not any credit due to me, or I mean, I think it's a real testament to our community here in Austin, to their schools, to their classmates, to their teachers, to the direction of the school, and yeah, I mean, that would rock me, but knock on wood, it hadn't happened yet.
How much do you regret coming back in 2009?
A lot.
Why? Because you got caught as a result?
No. Well, I did get. It was the bridge to the past. If I don't come back, the bridge isn't there. The view over the water is too far. The comeback was the bridge, but that was my decision, and so I have to be responsible for that. But it was one of the biggest mistakes in my life, and I don't have a good reason for why I wanted to come back. I don't have a good reason at all. But without the comeback, we are not sitting here having this conversation.
That will reinforce, Lance, some critics who would say you're sorry for getting caught, not for doing it in the first place again. And they would argue, that's the lack of contrition. They want you to be sorry for doing it in the first place, and without that, they're going to be reluctant to move on and forgive. Do you understand that?
I get that. I get that, and we talked about that. We talked about the decision at the time that what seemingly the collective group, almost definitively the collective group made. Listen, I think all of us, if I go back to 1995, and some started earlier, some started a little later, but let's use that as ground central, or ground zero. I think we're all sorry. And you know what we're sorry for? We're sorry that we were put in that place. None of us wanted to be in that place. We all would have loved to have competed man on man. Bread, water, naturally clean, whatever you want to call it. We're sorry. Yeah, we're sorry. We're sorry that we were put in the place, and we all looked around as desperate kids and thought, God, I got to go back to Plano and maybe go back to school or get a job or work in a bike shop or work in the factory, or a kid goes back to East Europe, or a kid goes to Australia, or a kid goes back to the fields of France.
Anything wrong with that, though? What's wrong with it?